What if ancient wisdom could speak directly to your life today? Welcome to Torah from Boca, where Rabbi David Baum brings the heart of Jewish tradition to the modern world. Each week, discover powerful lessons from Torah from Boca Raton, one of the fastest-growing Jewish populations in the world. We explore stories of leadership, resilience, and compassion, and help you find meaning for every stage of your journey. Whether you're a lifelong learner or just curious, tune in and let our Torah inspire you. Listen now to Torah from Boca with Rabbi David Baum.
Shabbat Shalom. Before I start my words, I wanted to give all of you just a way for you to talk a little bit. Here's my question. I want you to turn to the people around you and answer this question. How do you interpret the term, the chosen people? How do you interpret the term? And tell it to the people around you. Go. No, the people around you. Yeah. It's like, tell them. Talk with them. All right, if you haven't gotten a chance to speak yet, now's your time. All right, so we're going to wrap up our conversations. So, anyone want to share anything that they said? Yeah?
We chose God.
We chose God. Okay, so that is one of the interpretations. Anyone else? Yeah. So we were chosen because we had the longevity of following God, and God knew that the traditions, yeah?
To receive and teach the Torah.
To receive and teach the Torah, yeah?
Because we said yes when no one else did.
We said yes when no one else did. Yeah, Rabbi Ehrlich? Shh. Yeah. Right. Interesting. So this is a fascinating way of looking at it. In the past, though, how the term chosen people has been used against us. How has it been used against us? Give me one example. Who can tell me? Who can tell? How is it used against us? Yeah. Anti-Semitism. You think you're better than us. You think you're smarter than us, right? We run the banks. We were chosen to run the banks and media and Hollywood and what else, right? Shh, anyone's listening. This is not really true. I'm being sarcastic. If we did, things would be a lot better, I think, for us. Last one. No, okay, all right. So I'm going to go forward. But I want to say the reason I asked this question is because we welcomed a Jew into the world this week in our community. And I don't mean through birth. One of our seekers, a woman who raised her children in a Jewish home, has been married for nearly 30 years to a Jewish husband, a man, decided after October 7th, 2023, to officially join the Jewish people. And that happened this week. And as I was there, we're there at the Beit Din, the mikvah, and I found myself almost envious of Jen. That's her name, Jen Porat. Because she experienced something that those of us who are born Jews will never quite experience. She chose to be chosen. Conversion to Judaism, for those who know about the process, it's not symbolic, it's not easy. It involves years of learning and practice. You have to live a Jewish life in a Jewish community. And then after that year or 2-year process, you stand in front of a Beit Din, which is 3 rabbis, and you are questioned, and then you immerse into the mikvah. And our tradition teaches us, the Talmud says, that when a person emerges from the mikvah, they are as if they are a newborn baby. But unlike a baby, they come with memories. And they come with the full weight of the Torah on their shoulders. As part of the process, the conversion candidate has to actually make a formal declaration. They say they have to freely accept the God of Israel, the Torah of Israel, the people of Israel, expressing gratitude for the privileges of Jewish life, while committing to its obligations, its mitzvot. But as she was standing there, I thought about that line from the Talmud. A convert is like a person who is reborn. And I thought, what does it mean to walk out of the mikveh, taking on an entire covenant, most of which you don't know because you've only been learning for a year or two? What does it mean to fully accept that weight willingly, especially during these times? We live in times when it seems like it would be crazy for people to become Jewish, to say, I want to be part of the chosen people. And I look at them and I say, what does it really mean to choose this life? Jen wrote about this in her essays, and I wanted to share it with her permission. Early in her marriage, she thought about converting, but as she put it, life carried on. From time to time, she reconsidered, but her husband felt a formal conversion was unnecessary. He said, you're more Jewish than most Jews. You don't need to convert. 30 years later, 2 kids later, October 7th, 2023, as she watched the global response to that massacre and the rise in anti-Semitism, she wrote, it felt personal because it was personal. She began to think about all the Jewish people who uplifted her throughout her entire life. There was her husband, of course, but so many others. In her mostly Catholic high school, a Jewish guidance counselor provided weekly support to students who had lost a parent. Later, as a young social worker, many of her supervisors and teachers were Jewish. Her therapist of 20 years was Jewish. In 2020, when she needed brain surgery to remove a tumor, her neurosurgeon was Jewish. In a world where Jews make up only 0.2% of the population, and only 2% of the population in America, she noticed that the people who showed up for her when it mattered the most were usually Jewish. She also reflected on the Jewish writer. She is a professional writer who shaped her inner world. In college, a mentor introduced her to a medieval writer named Maimonides. She read Bernard Malamud. Later, she encountered Viktor Frankl in graduate school. She could not reconcile anti-Semitism with her own lived experience. How could the world direct so much hatred towards such a small people who had given her so much wisdom, compassion, and yes, humor? And then she began wondering about her own ancestry. According to her genetic testing, we all do it, she has mine was 99% Ashkenazi Jewish, by the way. Hers was a little bit smaller. She had a small trace of Ashkenazi DNA on both sides of her family. It's a tiny percentage, she writes, but on her report, it glimmered, she writes, like a buried treasure. And she asked this question, what happened to those long ago Jewish relatives that barely any trace of them remains? There's a midrash about Sinai, about Matan Torah, that all Jews, past, present, and future, even converts, stood at Sinai. Meaning all of us were there. That's why we stood. Now, I'm not sure that the midrash really is trying to understand how or explain how souls work, but they are trying to explain how covenant works. Sometimes a soul recognizes a covenant before the mind can explain it. And that brings us back to our original question. Why are we called the chosen people? At this point in the Torah and Yitro, we learn that we are chosen for the Torah. But the Torah is more than just a book. I want to take a step back. Remember where our ancestors were at this moment at Matan Torah. They're just freed slaves. The only way they were connected was through slavery and some distant version of tribes and maybe some ancestors. And then God begins to shape them as a people. The first mitzvah, create a calendar. Set your own time. You're no longer a slave to Pharaoh. But that wasn't enough. The Parsha brings the final step to the formation of a people, and that is the creation of a covenant. The midrash describes Sinai not just as revelation, but as a marriage, as a chuppah, Mount Sinai over us, and the ketubah is the Torah. But Sinai was a moment of connection, not just between God and Israel, but amongst the people themselves. The Torah says that Israel encamped there before the mountain. And the word is vayichan, which is, in singular, encamped. And Rashi notices this, Rashi, the well-known medieval commentator, and he says, vayichan, they camped there, it says singular. It should say they all camped there. He says, Israel, that it comes to teach us that Israel encamped as one person with one heart. Ki ish echad belev echad. And I understood that more broadly. A person cannot live forever, but a heart can. Sinai was not only a moment in the past, it is the breath of the generations that we pass from generation to generation, carried in the living hearts of those who choose to live by this book and this way of life. And that is why the midrash teaches that the souls of all Jews, past, present, and future, born and converted, stood at Sinai, because covenant transcends time. Sinai binds us across generations, but history reminds us that not every Jew remains bound in the same way. Last week, for Parshat Beshalach, I shared that only 1/5 of the Israelites left Egypt. The rest of them died or stayed behind. I also shared my own personal family story, that my mother, who is Polish from Poland, and all my family from Poland, that only 1/10 of Polish Jewry survived the Holocaust. That's less than 1/5. But not every loss in Jewish history came at the hands of our enemies. Some came through our own hands. Across generations, many Jews laid down the Torah. It was too heavy. And they moved on with their lives. And generations upon generations later, their descendants experience what Jen experienced this week. A faint glimmer like buried treasure. They wonder what happened to their long ago Jewish relatives and why barely a trace remains. It's not easy to be part of the chosen people. Wherever we live, whenever we live, like Tevye the milkman said, once in a while, can't you choose someone else? But that's not my answer. And it's not the answer I want to give you either. It certainly was not the answer that Jen gave this week, or the 4 others who chose to join our people after October 7th, 2023, when so many turned away from us. This Sunday, during the Super Bowl, you will see you'll see many expensive advertisements, but you will see that Jews are in one of them. Bob Kraft committed millions of dollars to fight anti-Semitism. 15 million, 8 million to go into a 130-second ad. Now, I'm not here as a rabbi to tell people how to spend their money, but I do it often. So if Mr. Kraft was listening, who's an amazing person and a philanthropist and such a great gifted leader for the Jewish people, my answer would say, invest the other 8 million in Torah. Because fighting anti-Semitism, it's not just our responsibility. It's a moral obligation for the non-Jewish world as well. And our task is also a bit different. When hatred tells us to be less Jewish in order to be safe, our response is to do the opposite, to be more Jewish, to wear your kippah with pride in safe ways, to cling to the teachings of our ancestors, to learn your story and pass it on. We were not chosen because we were better than any other people. We were chosen because we choose this history, this covenant, this brit, and the life of Torah. So raise your head high. Be proud, because even now, even in this moment, others are choosing what was simply chosen for us. I want to end by sharing the name that Jen chose, her Hebrew name, which she will be known by, Esther. She wrote, "When I learned about Queen Esther, my desire to convert was fully ignited. I wanted to stand beside my friends and loved ones. I wanted to carry some of their pain. How could I continue benefiting from Jewish life without taking on some of the risk of being Jewish too?" For her Hebrew name, she chose Esther because she was drawn to Esther's courage. That courage comes from the book of Esther. Esther sits safely in her palace in the 4th chapter. Her Jewish identity is hidden. And when her people face annihilation, Mordecai sends her a message. Do not imagine that you will escape because you are in the king's palace. If you remain silent, relief will come from elsewhere, but you will be lost. And who knows if you have come to this moment for just such a time as this. We live in a moment when Jews are being told explicitly or implicitly to feel shame for who you are and for the life that was chosen for us or the life that we choose. And I see Jews passionately standing up for every oppressed group and sometimes struggling to stand up for themselves. Not because they lack compassion, but because I believe they have not been truly taught how precious they are and how special they are. As my friend Rabbi Lior Sinai tells his children and all of his audiences, be yourself, everybody else is taken. Judaism has never taught us that we are chosen instead of others. It teaches us that we're chosen for something, for responsibility, for courage, and for showing up. Because it's hard to stand up for others if you can't stand up for yourself. Today, all of us have been crowned with the gift of Torah, but it's not a book. It's a living, breathing covenant. Torah lives when we show up here, when we study together, when we visit the sick, when we feed the hungry, when we daven, when we eat, when we learn together, when we carry our stories forward. Torah is not something that we inherit. It's something we choose to inherit. Today, like babies reborn, every year at Yitro, we accept that covenant once again. You are all chosen. And now the question is, what will you do with that gift? Wishing you all a Shabbat Shalom. And may we all choose Torah from here on out and spread it throughout the world. Amen.
If you found inspiration in today's episode of Torah from Boca, please visit Rabbi David Baum at Congregation Sha'arei Kodesh in Boca Raton. Discover more of his teachings and community work by visiting rabbidavidbaum.com. Subscribe, share, and join us again as we connect ancient wisdom to the challenges of today. Thank you for listening.